And welcome back to A Celtic State of Mind. I'm Paul John Dykes. Today, delighted to be joined by Stuart Ray, and also we've got Callum McFadden back on the show from Football CFB. Hopefully you'll be seeing more of Callum on the channel over the next season or so. I'm going to come to yourself first, Stuart, because obviously you have a keen eye on West Ham. In that first half performance, for a spell at least, I thought Celtic went toe-to-toe. And as Callum was saying just before we came live, they looked pretty good in attack as well.
Yeah, well, as I said to you before, I was worried early doors. You look good going forward. You split in passes a lot. We seem to be struggling with that and runs in behind. And I'd also said Sorrow, I thought it was a masterclass in the midfield for Sorrow until, unfortunately, I gave away that penalty. And then it's then 3-1.
I was really impressed with Sorrow. I've got to say, as you say, there was one mishap. Unfortunately, Callum, you've always got that in Sorrow, haven't you? He gives away a lot of needless fouls. And when the referee's just over your shoulder, I mean, you just don't dive in like he did. You know, it was a bit daft. And it's unfortunate because he had a very good first half, very creative in the first half.
He was very creative, and what I really liked about him in that first half was the fact that when he got on the ball, he was brave and he wanted to pass forward. And I think that's something that you need from any holding midfielder. It's very easy to receive the ball when you're in front of the two centre-backs and just play safe. But he was looking to be proactive. He was looking to go forward. And as you say, it's just unfortunate that you had that clumsy moment. But unfortunately, with Sorrow, at this moment in time, it is still kind of there. Where I don't think you can hang your hat on him for 8-10 games in the trot and not expect a couple of daft mistakes at this stage. But again, as he plays more and more, hopefully that'll come out of it. In terms of the first half, I thought another real positive, and it has been under Postecoglou so far for me, is Ryan Christie. He's had a lot of stick from fans last season, and rightly so. A lot of players deserve stick for some of the performances they put in, but he looks like he's reinvigorated. He's got a lot of energy. And I think if he continues to play in this form, I wouldn't be surprised to see him sign a new deal. I think that's something that I think Postecoglou will want, because he seems integral to the way he wants to play. I think at the moment, Christie's been a far better player under Postecoglou. It's still early doors than Turnbull. For me, Turnbull's a very good player going forward, but he doesn't give you enough going back the way for me, and that's something that I find frustrating. And just one other player I want to single out, and you've mentioned him earlier, Paul, Abada. He's just got bundles of pace. He gets you up off your seat, and he looks like a forward who isn't going to give the fullback he's playing against a moment's peace. He seems as if, even if he's not got the ball, he's always going to press up the pitch, and I think that's a real positive for us going forward as well.
It's a natural thing, Callum, when you're a football fan, that you see a player and it's reminiscent of someone in the past, and in the kind of near past. I've seen a lot of fans comparing his style, his direct nature, to vintage Scott Sinclair. And, you know, if that is his style, it can't be a bad thing. See, on your Ryan Christie point, it's an excellent point. I mean, he divides opinion amongst the ACSOM contributors. And you've seen him on the left-hand side of the park, on the right-hand side. There's a discipline to his game. Now, I'm not going to say he was indisciplined last season. I just don't think that there was the same kind of game plan as Ange's given him. So it wasn't a personal thing, an individual thing. I think it was actually across the board. Ange's given him a role. I think he showed up really well in this game and against Midfield as well. Do you think that, because I had almost given up hope on Ryan Christie, I just thought he's got his view on this move, he wants to do it, and he's fixed in his view. But he does seem reinvigorated. We spoke a few weeks ago about the types of players who really benefit when a new manager comes in. They get a second wind, they get a new lease of life. One of the kind of natural ones that springs to mind under Martin O'Neill that people mention time and time again is Bobby Pettit. Now, I think that, you know, when I look back, I know that he had a few good performances under Martin O'Neill, but I don't think he was reinvigorated in that he did it for 20 or 30 or 40 games. I think there were highlights in the season that Martin O'Neill took over, but they weren't that often, to be honest. The 6-2 game springs to mind. The Ajax game away, he was impressive and he scored a goal. And I reckon the player that was reinvigorated when O'Neill came in was Stan Petrov, actually. I think that he really came into his own under O'Neill. Ryan Christie, I'm going to use a cliche, it would be like a new signing if we did see the Ryan Christie 3 seasons ago, Cal.
Absolutely, and you're right in the sense that a lot of people think he's playing for a move away, and that's been the sort of narrative that people have given. But I just think he looks like a player who is committed at the moment. I think he's got bundles of energy, and it's very easy to say, "Oh, he's just wanted." I think if he was desperate for that move and he wanted it to happen now, I don't think you would be seeing him play in these sorts of games. I think he would be sitting these kind of games out. He might play in the sort of qualifying matches, but you're right. It's reminiscent of the Christie that really came into his own under Brendan Rodgers when he was brought back into the fold, and that can only be a positive thing going forward. I must say, I also like McGregor playing further up the park as well. I thought he took his goal exceptionally well. He's a player who can hurt the opposition, and I know a lot of people seem to like it when he plays deep because he is very comfortable on the ball. But I think if you can play him further forward, he can really play lovely through passes for whoever's going to be up front or in the wide areas to get in behind the defence and cause problems. And as he's shown with Scotland in the Euros, he showed again today, he's got an eye for goal, and he can score a very important goal, and he can finish well when he's asked to.
There's a comment that's come in earlier on one of the socials. Unfortunately, the system we use refreshes sometimes, and I lose the comment. But it was basically, don't worry, if West Ham score 4, we'll score 5. This is going back to a conversation we had with Dan Orowitz, who writes for the Japan Times, Stuart, and he was talking about Postecoglou's kind of mentality and his philosophy, whereby it's all about attacking and he doesn't. And to be honest with you, people were hearing that thinking, no, we can't really approach games in that manner. It's certainly not by design, but Celtic, Stuart, when you're watching them today, they look really woefully inept at the back. Now, that's been the biggest concern because that was the biggest issue of many issues, of a myriad of issues last season. But I don't want to give young Murray too much of a hard time because he's going to be playing on Wednesday night. And I just think it's one of these things where, just play through it. Barkas, I think, is a different conversation altogether. But young Murray has made a mistake in that first half. You've seen his head going down. It's important that he stays on the park and he just plays through that, isn't it? Yeah,
it's a tough one because they're both young, the centre-halves. And maybe for Murray, when you coming into the team, you'd maybe want somebody a bit more experienced beside you. That's not necessarily the be-all. He doesn't need that. But it's a tough one, and today's a tough one as well. Antonio is a different type of striker, and he won't come up against a striker like that often. He's fast, he's incredibly strong. He's got a bit of everything. And although he might not always be the just sort of fox in the box type of guy, but he is an incredibly good striker. And it's not an easy task for him, but the fact that he's playing in these games and he played midweek at the age he is, he's got a long career ahead of him, I think.
I hope so. I was saying earlier on, Callum, scarily enough, when Callum McGregor was made the captain and the pictures of him as a kid popping up playing for some Celtic youth team, probably before he was even 10, and it's incredible. But Murray has been at Celtic since he was 6 years of age. He's been at the club for 12 years. For him to come in a European game under the circumstances that he did, I thought his performance was excellent under those circumstances. But it does concern me with a young player that kind of thing gives him the heavy head. I mean, this is a boy that's going to be starting on Wednesday night. What does Ange Postecoglou do at half-time for a young kid like that?
I think you have to keep him on the park, and I think you have to just show faith in him to try and play himself back into this game. He's made a couple of errors in this game, as we've said, but the unfortunate thing for him is Welsh talked him through the game well in midweek, but he's also got two fullbacks. Ralston, as I talked about earlier, a player who is nowhere near Celtic standard. Greg Taylor, for me, could he be an effective rotation or a backup option? Probably, but and Barkas can go behind him. I don't think Murray's been helped by the players he's playing alongside at the moment. As I say, I think it's an incredibly tough task to come into. You're right, given the circumstances, he played well during the week. This was always going to be a different test. Antonio, as Stuart said, is always a handful. He's a player who scores goals regularly in the Premier League, and not that's to be an all and end all, but he's got many attributes to his game that can cause even the most experienced defenders trouble. So I think it's a tough learning curve. On commentary, Rory Hamilton talked about it's better to make mistakes and learn in a pre-season game than do this in a qualifier. So I just hope he takes this game as a massive learning curve going into midweek, because it's incredible. It would be an incredibly pressurised game for the likes of Julien. if he was available. Starfelt coming in, never mind a young 18-year-old, as you mentioned, Paul. He's been at the club for a long time, but naturally he'll probably feel that pressure a little more because he knows what's weighing on the club and what's weighing on him. But hopefully he can play himself into the game again in the second half. And I just want to mention it. Barkas for me for the second goal was very, very poor in my opinion. I thought he just showed far too much of the goal to West Ham, and then penalties is always hard, but he just doesn't fill me with any confidence. I know he made 2 saves early on, and the crowd really got up behind him. But again, it's the same old story going into half time. You're going in, and if you're in that back four in front of him, will you be coming back out thinking, we score a second, we're back into this game? Or will you be constantly thinking, can we keep another one out? Because, as I say, for whatever reason, he just doesn't fill me with any confidence.
No, it's a good point. We're just about to return to the action, but before we do, I had written in here about Barkas with the 2 stops, and I thought to myself, excellent. Chris Sutton's on commentary going, this could be a turning point for Barkas. And then the goal he conceded, Callum, it was reminiscent of the Ferencvaros goal, when Al-Hamid showed far too much to the striker, and he's left the gaping space at his near post. It was very, very similar to that goal. If you don't learn, you never will. You know, if you don't learn from that original mistake that bumped us out of Europe last season, then you never will. So, yeah, good point. We're going into the second half. Let's see what Celtic turns up. We will be back at full time. Thanks, everybody, for getting involved in Facebook, Twitter and on YouTube. Thank you to Stuart and Callum for joining me on A Celtic State of Mind.